Welcome to Wild West Hearts, where honor rides with every hoofbeat dust burns in your lungs and every tail smells of gunpowder.
The sun is a merciless white eye over the Badlands. Dust, fine as chalk, coats everything. The scrub brush, the scattered rocks, the weathered posts of the fence Joel mends with hands that have seen too much. The silence here is complete, broken only by the rhythmic rap of his hammer and the occasional whisper of wind across the parched earth. It's the kind of quiet that weighs on a man, that makes him hear the ghosts he carries. Joel pauses mid-swing, wiping sweat from his weathered brow with a forearm. 48 years have carved deep lines into his face, but it's his eyes that tell the real story. They've witnessed horrors that most men couldn't bear. He moves with the quiet precision of someone who has learned that wasted motion can cost lives. His clothes hang loose on his frame, faded by sun and time, much like the man himself. His dog, a lean mutt with one torn ear and eyes too knowing for a simple animal, suddenly lifts its head. The low whine that escapes its throat sends a chill down Joel's spine, despite the punishing heat. He straightens, following the dog's gaze toward the eastern edge of his property, where nothing but more emptiness should be. The dog whines again, backing away, refusing to move closer to whatever has caught its attention. Joel's hand automatically reaches for the rifle leaning against the fence post. Not out of fear. Fear is a luxury he abandoned long ago, but out of habit, the same instinct that keeps him sleeping light and checking sight lines. "What is it, boy?" His voice is rough from disuse, the sound of it strange in the vast stillness. As he approaches, he sees it, a dark, unnatural line staining the pale dirt. Not the wandering trail of coyote or deer. This is a drag mark, wide and continuous, leading from the direction of the burned-out homestead on the next ridge. Joel's jaw tightens. That place has been empty for months, ever since the night the sky glowed orange, and no one came riding for help. The drag marks wend over the hardpan, disappearing over a low rise. Joel follows, his limp more pronounced without an audience to hide it from. The wound is an old one, a souvenir from a war most folks are trying to forget. His rifle rests easy in his hands, an extension of himself. Over the rise, the trail ends at a patch of disturbed earth. For a moment, the scene makes no sense to him. Then the wind shifts, stirring the fine layer of dust, and Joel feels his blood turn cold. A braid of dark hair emerges from the ground. Then the curve of a forehead, the bridge of a nose. A human head buried to the neck in the packed earth. Her eyes are open, staring upward at the unforgiving sky, but they see nothing. Her skin is ashen beneath its coating of dirt, her lips cracked and bloodless. A single fly crawls across her face, and she doesn't blink. Joel thinks she is dead, has to be dead, until he sees the faintest flutter of her eyelids, so slight he might have imagined it. But Joel's eyes narrow, his posture shifting subtly. The doctor in him, long dormant but never truly gone, takes over. He kneels beside her, movements precise and clinical. 2 fingers press expertly against her carotid artery, searching for what the untrained would miss. There, a pulse, weak and thready, but present. He gently lifts one eyelid, studying the pupil's sluggish reaction to sunlight. His mind catalogs symptoms automatically: severe dehydration, hypovolemic shock, possible hypothermia despite the heat. The corners of his mouth tighten as he makes his silent assessment. Severe exposure, he murmurs to himself. 12 hours at most before organ failure. He doesn't hesitate. He begins to dig, not with the shovel that stands in his barn, but with his bare hands. The earth is baked hard as iron, unyielding. His nails split and his fingers bleed as he claws at the ground. But he doesn't stop. Sweat stings his eyes and drips onto the dirt, turning it to mud. The sun beats down relentlessly, but Joel works with the grim, silent intensity of a man who has seen death too many times to surrender to it easily. "Hold on," he mutters, though he doubts she can hear him. "Just hold on." When he finally exposes her shoulders, the full horror becomes clear. She's young, maybe early 20s, with the kind of delicate features that have no place in this harsh land. Her dress is torn, revealing purpling bruises on her arms and throat. She is completely limp, a dead weight in the earth that holds her. With a final, desperate heave, Joel pulls her free and lays her on the ground. Before lifting her, he runs his hands carefully along her spine, feeling each vertebra through the thin fabric of her dress. No obvious fractures, he whispers, his doctor's training taking precedence over haste. He checks her limbs next, methodically feeling for broken bones beneath the alarming pattern of bruises. His jaw clenches at what he finds. Not just violence, but calculated cruelty. Mild hyperthermia, severe contusions along the rib cage, possible internal bleeding. The clinical terms fall from his lips automatically, a shield against the horror of what he's witnessing. Extreme dehydration, at least 36 hours without water. She's breathing, but it's shallow, her chest barely rising. Her eyes remain open, but vacant, a waking coma. Her body might be here, but her mind is somewhere else, trapped in whatever nightmare put her in this grave. Joel runs a hand over his face, leaving a streak of dirt and blood. Then he gathers her up, one arm behind her shoulders, the other under her knees. She's lighter than she should be, all bone and sinew. As he lifts her, her head lolls against his chest, her eyes still fixed on nothing. "I've got you now," he says, knowing the words are more for himself than for her. "You're safe." The walk back to his cabin is slow, his bad leg protesting with each step. By the time the weathered structure comes into view, a plain wooden box against the vast emptiness, Joel's shirt is soaked through with sweat. The dog trots ahead, looking back occasionally as if making sure Joel is still following. Inside the cabin, the air is stifling. Joel lays the woman on his narrow cot, the only bed in the house, and steps back, suddenly unsure. The cabin is spare, utilitarian. A table, 2 chairs, a small stove, shelves lined with a few books and tins of food. It's the home of a man who expects nothing and needs less. He looks down at her still form, the open, unseeing eyes. She doesn't blink enough. He reaches out, hesitates, then gently closes her eyelids with his thumb. They stay closed for a moment, then flutter open again, revealing the same empty stare. Joel turns away, walks to the basin in the corner, and begins to scrub the dirt and blood from his hands. His movements are methodical, almost surgical in their precision. The water turns rust-colored, then black. "Don't know your name," he says without turning around. "Don't need to. You rest now." That night, the cabin is silent, save for the occasional crack of the fire and her shallow breathing. Joel doesn't sleep. He sits in a chair by the window, watching the moonlit desolation outside. His hands, clean now, but rough with fresh scabs, rest on his knees. After a while, he rises and goes to an old trunk pushed against the wall. From it, he pulls a small worn leather satchel, his medical kit from another life. He brings it to the table and opens it carefully. The steel instruments inside glint in the firelight. Scalpels, forceps, needles, tools meant to heal, to repair what's broken. His hand trembles slightly as he touches a scalpel. The cool metal triggers a flood of memories. A field tent, the smell of blood and canvas. Too many wounded men, not enough hands, not enough time. Suddenly, he's not in his cabin anymore. The air is thick with the metallic stench of blood and the acrid bite of gunpowder. Canvas walls snap in the wind as artillery booms in the distance. A young corporal lies on the table before him, face pale as paper, eyes bright with fever and fear. "Am I going to make it, Doc?" the boy asks, his voice barely audible over the chaos outside. Joel's hands are steady as he works, even as exhaustion threatens to overwhelm him. "You'll be all right, son," he promises, the lie bitter on his tongue. The wound is too deep, the infection too advanced. The boy needs a real hospital, not a blood-soaked tent 50 yards from the front line. The corporal's hand clutches Joel's sleeve. "Don't let me die, Doc. Please. I got folks waiting." "You'll see them again," Joel says, injecting morphine to ease the pain. By dawn, the boy is gone. One more ghost to carry, one more promise broken. The memory dissolves, leaving Joel standing in his cabin, the scalpel cold in his trembling hand. He snaps the medical bag closed with sudden force. "Not this time," he whispers to the silent room, to the ghosts that never leave. He looks at the woman on the cot. This is different. The wound that needs healing isn't one he can see or stitch closed. It's something deeper, something he recognizes all too well. He returns to his chair, settles in for the long night ahead. "Not gonna hurt you," he says into the quiet room. "Not gonna let anyone else hurt you either." A promise he intends to keep. Days pass, each identical to the last. Joel establishes a routine around her stillness. In the morning, he places a bowl of thin broth and a cup of water by her bed. In the evening, he clears them away, untouched. He bathes her face with a damp cloth, combs her long dark hair with his fingers, careful of the tangles. He changes her torn dress for one of his clean shirts, averting his eyes as much as possible to preserve her dignity. He never tries to force her to speak or eat. He simply exists in the space with her, moving through his daily tasks with quiet efficiency. He doesn't fill the silence with constant talk. Words have never been his strong suit. Instead, he creates a rhythm she can depend on. The clink of the coffee pot at dawn, the creak of the door at midday, the scrape of his chair by the fire at dusk. Predictable sounds, nothing sudden, nothing threatening. In the evenings, Joel often sits at his small table, cleaning his old medical instruments. He lays them out on a clean cloth, oils the hinges, sharpens the blades. The routine soothes him, orders his thoughts when the memories press too close. One afternoon, as he gently combs the tangles from her hair, his fingers encounter something caught in the dark strands. A splinter of wood, long and sharp. Without thinking, he reaches for the forceps that lie on the table. With one precise, practiced movement, he extracts the splinter, his touch clinical but careful. He holds it up to the light, examining it. Cottonwood, most likely, from the burned homestead. His voice is low, matter of fact. He turns to dispose of it and freezes. Her eyes are on the forceps in his hand, following its movement. And something else, a soft exhalation, almost imperceptible. The first conscious reaction to the world around her. The pain of the splinter's removal had registered, had pulled her momentarily back to the present. That night, he leaves a small piece of bread beside the broth, softer, easier to manage. In the morning, the bread is gone. The old shrapnel in Joel's leg picks that week to act up. It starts as a dull ache that he can ignore, but by the second day, pain radiates up his thigh, hot and insistent. A fever follows, making his hands shake and his vision blur at the edges. He tries to carry on with his routines. He sets out her food, though he can barely stand. He attempts to change the bandage on his thigh, but his fingers are clumsy with fever. The roll of clean linen slips from his grasp, unspooling across the floor. He curses under his breath, leans his head back against the chair, and finally surrenders to a wave of exhaustion. He wakes hours later to an unfamiliar sensation, coolness on his forehead. The fire has been stoked higher, warming the cabin against the night chill. He feels a strange lightness in his leg. Looking down, he sees that the old, soiled bandage is gone. In its place is a new one, wrapped cleanly and with surprising skill. Movement catches his eye. She is kneeling on the floor where the linen roll had fallen. Beside her is a small bowl of water in the bloodied strip from his old dressing. She isn't looking at him. She is slowly, deliberately washing the old bandage in the basin, her thin fingers working the fabric with care. But there's something else too. A small pile of green leaves beside her knee, some of them already chewed to a pulp. He recognizes them immediately. Yarrow, a natural anti-inflammatory that grows in the shadows of the rocks near the creek. She's applied some of the pulp to his wound before bandaging it, the way native healers do. It is the first purposeful action she has taken since he found her. And not just any action. She has used her own knowledge to help him, revealing something of herself in the process. She is cleaning his wound, applying medicine she gathered herself, repaying a debt neither of them had spoken of. Joel watches her, his throat tight with an emotion he can't name. He says nothing. She doesn't look up, but in the quiet shared space of the cabin, something shifts, a bridge forming across the void that separates two damaged souls. The fever breaks by morning. Joel rises, testing his weight on the bad leg. The pain has receded to its usual dull throb. He moves around the cabin, preparing breakfast, aware of her eyes following him now, though she still doesn't speak. He places a bowl of porridge beside her cot. "Thank you," he says simply, and leaves her to eat in privacy. When he returns from tending the goats, the bowl is empty. She sits by the window, a blanket around her shoulders despite the heat, looking out at the vast emptiness of the Badlands. Her hands resting in her lap are never still. They twist together, fingers working against each other in endless, agitated motion. Joel takes a small block of wood from a shelf and a knife from his belt. He sits at the table and begins to carve, his movements sure and practiced. He doesn't look at her directly, doesn't crowd her newfound awareness with demands or questions. After a time, he sets the small, crude shape of a bird on the table between them. It's simple, Just the suggestion of wings and a beak, but recognizable. He returns to his chores without a word. That evening, he finds the wooden bird in her hands. Her fingers trace its rough edges repeatedly, a tactile anchor to the present moment. It's nearly a week later when the sound of approaching hooves breaks the silence of the afternoon. Joel is at the water pump filling a bucket. He straightens, his hand automatically reaching for the knife at his belt. The dog growls low, hackles raised. A man appears on the horizon, riding a sleek bay horse that looks out of place against the dusty landscape. As he draws closer, Joel can see he's dressed in a clean duster and polished boots, his hat unmarked by travel. His face is smooth, well-fed, with a neatly trimmed beard and eyes the color of a frozen pond. "Dr. Byrne," the man calls as he dismounts. His voice carries an Eastern accent, the words too precisely formed. "I hoped I might find you here." Joel doesn't correct the title he no longer uses. "Don't recall inviting company," he says. The man smiles, the expression not reaching his eyes. "Forgive the intrusion. I'm Theodore Thorne, agent for the Western Pacific Railroad Company." He extends a gloved hand, which Joel ignores. Thorne's smile doesn't falter. He withdraws a folded document from his coat. "I've come on a matter of some importance. The company has acquired this land, including the abandoned homestead on the next ridge." He unfolds the paper, a deed stamped with official seals and signatures. "Progress, Doctor. The railroad will bring civilization to these parts." Joel's expression doesn't change. "This is my property." Thorne's smile turns patronizing. "I'm afraid not. All legal and proper, I assure you. The previous owner," he glances toward the burned homestead. "Well, unfortunate business that, but the land has been properly transferred." A sound from the cabin doorway draws both men's attention. She stands there, thin and ghost-like in Joel's oversized shirt, her dark hair loose around her shoulders. In her hands, she clutches the small wooden bird, her knuckles white with tension. Thorne's gaze sharpens, a flash of recognition followed by something darker, a gleam of pleasure at her fear. His nostrils flare slightly, like a predator catching a scent. He steps around Joel, moving toward her with the practiced grace of a man accustomed to taking what he wants. "Well now," he says softly. His voice drops to a register meant only for her ears. "Look who survived." She shrinks back against the doorframe, but Thorne advances until he looms over her. One gloved finger reaches out to touch her cheek. She flinches but doesn't move, frozen by terror. "Such resilience," he murmurs. "Your father lacked that quality," begged quite pitifully at the end. His finger moves to the wooden bird in her hands, tracing its crude shape. "Interesting. He was carving something similar when we arrived that night. A family tradition, perhaps?" His smile widens, revealing teeth too perfect for the frontier. "Did you hear him screaming while the flames took hold? I made sure he was still conscious when we started digging your grave." He leans closer, inhaling near her hair. "I wanted him to watch." Joel moves forward, but Thorne raises a hand. "Business first, Doctor. I'm simply reacquainting myself with Miss Miller." He steps back, adjusting his gloves. "The company requires this land. I personally require her silence." His eyes flick to Joel, then back to her. "I do so enjoy finishing what I start." He turns back to Joel, his demeanor shifting seamlessly to professional courtesy. "You have 1 week to vacate. Take the woman if you wish, though I can't imagine what use that broken thing might be." As he mounts his horse, Thorne's mask slips for a moment, revealing something reptilian beneath the civilized veneer. "Perhaps I'll bury you both next time, side by side, a touching tableau." He rides away, the dust settling in his wake like ash. Thorne tips his hat, unperturbed. "Consider carefully, Doctor. Progress can't be stopped." He mounts his horse with practiced ease. "I'll return in a week for your decision." He rides away, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Joel watches until he disappears over the horizon. Then he turns toward the cabin. She has retreated inside, but he can see her silhouette by the window, still holding the wooden bird like a talisman. That evening, Joel sits at the table, the railroad deeds spread before him. The official seals and confident signatures mock him with their authority. It is the law. It is progress. It is the same engine that fueled the war, the same logic that decided which men were worth saving and which were not. He looks over at her. She sits in the corner, legs drawn up to her chest, still clutching the small wooden bird, her thumb stroking its smooth surface. In her eyes, he sees a flicker of something. Not life, not yet, but the memory of it. And beyond that, fear. She recognizes Thorn's kind. She knows what men like him do to women like her. Joel remembers the soldiers he was forced to leave behind, the ones that progress had no time for, the ones deemed expendable. He will not make that choice again. He walks to the stove, the deed still in his hand. He doesn't hesitate. He opens a small iron door and drops the paper onto the glowing coals. He watches as the edges curl, blacken, and turn to ash. The official signatures, the legal claims, the entire weight of the outside world, all of it burns away into nothing. When he turns, she is watching him, her eyes reflecting the orange glow from the stove. For the first time, there is something like awareness in them, a question. "This is our home," Joel says simply. "No one's taking it from us." That night, Joel dreams of the war. He is back in the field hospital, hands deep in a man's chest, trying to find the source of the bleeding. But the blood keeps coming, pooling around his boots. The face of the dying soldier shifts, becomes the young corporal he couldn't save, then Thorn, then the woman. He wakes with a gasp, sweat-soaked despite the pre-dawn chill. The cabin is dark, but as his eyes adjust, he sees her sitting upright on the cot, watching him. Her eyes gleam in the darkness, alert and present in a way they haven't been before. "Bad dreams," he mutters, more to himself than to her. He rises, stokes the fire, puts water on to boil. "They buried me." The words are so soft, so unexpected, that at first Joel thinks he's imagined them. He turns slowly. She sits perfectly still, the wooden bird cradled in her palms. "What?" he asks, his voice barely a whisper. "They buried me." Her voice is raw from disuse, but the words are clear now. "They came at night, took everything, burned it all. Then they buried me." Her eyes meet his, fully present now, filled with a horror no one should have to carry. "They wanted me to die slow, to feel the earth pressing down, to know I was forgotten." Joel's hands clench at his sides. "Who?" he asks, though he already suspects. "Men from the railroad. They said the land was theirs now." A tear slides down her cheek, the first he's seen. "My father wouldn't sell, said this land was our future." She looks down at the wooden bird. "They shot him, made me watch. Then they buried me." Joel crosses to her, kneels before the cot. He doesn't touch her. Instinct tells him she's not ready for that. But he makes sure she can see his face. Read the truth there. "You're safe now," he says. "No one's going to hurt you again. I promise." She looks at him, really looks at him, perhaps for the first time. "You dug me out," she says. Not a question. "Yes." "Why?" Joel considers the question. There are many answers he could give, complicated ones about redemption and atonement. But in the end, there's only one truth that matters. "Because you were still breathing," he says. She nods, accepting this simple answer. Then softly, "Sarah. My name is Sarah." "Joel," he responds. It's the first real conversation they've had, brief as it is. But in those few words, a connection forms, stronger than either of them yet realizes. The week passes too quickly. Joel teaches Sarah to shoot his old revolver. Her hands are steady, her eyes sharp. She doesn't speak much, but when she does, her words are measured, thoughtful. At night, she still wakes from nightmares, a silent scream on her lips. Joel never mentions it, but he always stokes the fire higher afterward, filling the cabin with light to chase away the memory of darkness. They both know Thorn will return. They both know what's coming. On the 7th day, they hear the horses. Not one this time, but 3. Joel steps onto the porch, his shotgun in the crook of his arm, not aimed but ready. Sarah stands in the doorway behind him, her face set in lines of quiet determination. Thorn rides at the front, flanked by 2 rough-looking men with guns on their hips. They stop a short distance from the cabin, 3 abreast, an unmistakable show of force. "Last chance, Doctor," Thorn calls out. His voice carries across the yard, falsely genial. "Leave peacefully, or we will remove you." Joel doesn't move, doesn't raise his weapon. He simply stands there, a silent, immovable object in Thorn's path. To his surprise, Sarah steps out beside him. She is no longer the ghost he pulled from the earth. Her eyes are clear, focused. In her right hand, she still holds the wooden bird. Her left rests near the revolver tucked into her belt. Thorne's eyes widen slightly at the sight of her, standing straight and alive. Then his composure returns, along with his cold smile. "This land is ours now," he says, gesturing to the valley spread before them. "Progress cannot be stopped." Sarah takes one step forward. Her voice, unused for so long, is quiet, but it cuts through the silence like a blade. "This was my home." The words hang in the air. Was. An admission of all she has lost. But in speaking, she is no longer a silent victim. She is a witness. She is the truth that Thorne tried to bury. "My father's name was Thomas Miller," she continues, each word stronger than the last. "He built that homestead with his own hands. And you murdered him. You put me in the ground and left me for dead." Thorne's smirk falters. The hired men shift uncomfortably in their saddles. This isn't what they were told. They came to evict a squatter, not to face a survivor with a story. "Preposterous," Thorne says, but his voice lacks conviction. The girl is clearly disturbed. "I recognize your voice," Sarah interrupts. "You gave the order. You stood and watched while they dug the hole." Her hand moves to the revolver. "I remember every word you said." Thorne's face hardens. He signals to his men, a slight nod. One reaches for his gun. Joel raises his shotgun in one fluid motion. "I wouldn't," he says quietly. The tableau holds for a long, tense moment. Sarah and Joel on the porch, 3 mounted men before them, the vast, indifferent landscape stretching away in all directions. Then Thorne looks from Sarah to Joel, sees their shared stillness, the absolute certainty in their stance, and understands. He has lost. Whatever he hoped to gain by claiming this harsh piece of land, it's not worth dying for. He turns his horse without another word and rides away. After a moment's hesitation, his men follow. Joel and Sarah stand side by side, watching until the dust settles and the riders are just specks on the horizon. Only then does Joel lower his shotgun. Sarah looks at him, her eyes holding his without a shadow between them for the first time. "They'll come back," she says, "with more men." Joel nods. "Probably. What then?" He considers the question, looking out over the badlands that have been his refuge and his prison. Finally, he shrugs. "We'll be ready." Sarah's hand finds his, her fingers cool against his calloused palm. It's the first time she's initiated contact. "Thank you," she says, "for digging me out." Joel's throat tightens. He doesn't say that she's done the same for him, in her way. That in saving her, he's found something he thought he'd lost in the war. Purpose, maybe, or simply humanity. Instead, he squeezes her hand gently. "Let's go inside," and he says, "Storm's coming." Together they turn toward the cabin, 2 survivors against the vast emptiness, carrying their ghosts but no longer defined by them. Sarah was left for Coyotes, buried to her neck, until a lone cowboy dug her out with his bare hands. And in doing so, perhaps saved himself as well.